Legalize betting in sports, allow FDI into casinos and online gambling industry. That's the recommendation coming in from the Law Commission. It seems to be progressive, at the same time controversial as well. And these recommendations, of course, are to the government. Keep in mind that these recommendations in no way are binding. The government, of course, is free to accept or reject these recommendations. Moreover, the Law Commission has also said that the Parliament can enact a model legislation that can be adopted by various states to regulate betting in sports. The Commission has also called for cashless transactions and Aadhaar linkage to curb money laundering fears as far as gambling is concerned. In fact, to take this conversation forward, we're now joined by renowned sports journalist Sharda Ugra. We'll also be joined in a bit by the former AG, Mr. SorabjeeSoli. That's in a bit. But first, let me come across to you, Sharda. It's interesting that one of the references that has been made by Justice B.S. Chauhan, the chairman of the Law Commission, has been to the Mahabharata. And I'll quote him here. He says that had gambling been regulated at the time of the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir could not have staked his wife and brothers in a gamble. Now, what's interesting is that he is making reference to a widely followed religious text, and then later on goes on to conclude that the very same people who do follow this widely followed religious text will make that transition into accepting what is in many areas of the country a social taboo. Gambling is a social taboo. So is it just me being able to see the irony, or do you see it as well? And if not, then how easy or difficult will it be to accept these recommendations to make that transition?
I think we should keep sort of the Mahabharata and, the honorable judge's observations about it separate from what exactly is at hand here. I don't think it's a question of tradition as much as it is a question of socio-economic conditions that are in the country. How are you going to manage them? And primarily, I think the problem is not one of sort of gambling as a habit per se, which is, there are other, several states have several forms of gambling that can be indulgent, horse racing, lottery, so on. But rather, what are you going to do? Will this do anything to the illegal gambling industry that there is in India, which is largely functioning on cash? It's not online, it's not Aadhaar, it's not PAN number, it's cash. That's what all the Indian gambling that takes place, the larger sort of proportion of it that takes place is in cash. Okay. And is this going to solve the problems if you make it legal? Are you going to remove cash? Are you going to take cash out of the market? We know what happened the last time that was tried. That's really one central issue that there is about to make gambling legal, because, and if I'll just go on for a little bit, the Law Commission came into this sort of debate because of the IPL 2013 scandal that set this thing off. And they're trying to tie in the scandal and illegal betting with cricket, the spot fixing and so on. And those are two separate things, and there are two separate streams of action that are to be taken. Is betting, making betting legal one of them? According to me, I don't think it is.
Fair enough. Let's also get Mr. Sorabjee in. He's finally joining us. Mr. Sorabjee, let me take this question across to you. That's an interesting comment that Ms. Ugra had made, that going forward, this is essentially about the moot point is regulating illegal gambling like we had in the IPL. That's the one moot point. But before we come to that, the first question is, I'll name you 4 states here: Gujarat, Bihar, Manipur and Nagaland. What's common between all 4 is that we have seen a prohibition with respect to alcohol. So clearly, the broader political sense in the states appear to be that they are siding with societal morality. Do you see any reason now why people in the country would now perhaps choose to go against this conceived social morality and accept these recommendations in the current form, which is to accept gambling and to do away with the taboo? Do you see that happening, Mr. Sorabjee?
Well, I think the Law Commission chairman was a former judge of the Supreme Court. He knows how the system works. He has made a proposal which I think is pragmatic and realistic. Illegal betting takes place. So why not recognize it and bring it in the mainstream? I don't understand this. We are not concerned with questions of morality here. We are concerned with questions of reality. Bring it in the mainstream, have proper safeguards, and I think it will be, I don't understand what the objection to that is. If there is any difficulty in implementation, then you can approach the court, you can approach the Law Commission again, but to say at the beginning that this recommendation should not be implemented, I'm not in favor of that at all.
Mr. Sorabjee, let me also just get your thoughts on the dissenting opinion that has been put across as a part of this report. The convention has been that the members of the Law Commission within themselves have their views coalesced together into one uniform recommendation that goes out. But interestingly, this time there has been a dissenting note that has been put forth by Professor S. Sivakumar, who says that the socio-economic and cultural circumstances of the country are not pragmatic to accept legalized gambling activities, that the time is not ripe for legalizing gambling due to widespread poverty prevalent in the country. Let me just get your thoughts, Mr. Sorabjee, on this dissenting note that has been put across as a part of the very same report.
Well, this is not a legal objection, this is not a political objection, but assuming there is some merit in it, I don't see any reason why we should not see, we should not try and see that the recommendations can be put through. They are not perfect, I agree, but surely they are a step forward. And actually, illegal betting takes place. You have recognized it. The Law Commission has been pragmatic, has been realistic, and I don't understand the objection to it.
Right, Mr. Sorabjee. So the call is being put out as far as pragmatism is concerned. Let me get Sharda back into this conversation. Sharda, as far as illegal betting is concerned, and especially with respect to sports, we had a very explicit recommendations coming in from the Lodha committee looking into the IPL spot fixing saga. And now that is followed up with this recommendation coming in from the law panel. The question essentially here is the time truly here and now as far as going forward is concerned and regulating the sport, regulating the betting in sport, given that as per estimates of the Law Commission itself, we're looking at as much as 27,000 crore rupees being spent in betting in the last 28 months. So do you feel that the time is truly here and now to make good these recommendations?
If we are going to follow what the Lodha Commission has recommended, I have to say that maybe we should take a step back, and because this is literally sort of, if you're looking at the entire exercise, this is step C. Step A is to, Lodha recommendation says to fix the BCCI's administrative fractures and problems which they're trying to do, and it's been a struggle for the last 5 years now. It's been a struggle for the court to do so. Number two is this anti-corruption law that is being that had to be put into place, which will then be one step towards getting the actual athletes out of getting caught up in illegal betting and thinking twice about it. Athletes, support staff, officials, and so on. That is sitting in the law ministry, between the law ministry and the sports ministry. That's hanging somewhere. This draft of this of the Prevention of Sports Corruption or Sporting Fraud Act has been sitting there for 5 years. What the Law Commission has done now is betting is legalized. It's like literally the last step that the Lodha Committee has recommended. So let's not make the Lodha Committee's recommendations about betting to be the most important thing that has to be done immediately, because you haven't even bothered to take the first step completely and comprehensively. You haven't even got there. And never mind the second step, which is this draft bill, which those poor lawyers worked through the night to be able to put it in place so that it could make news and everyone could say, yes, yes, this is out there. This is just sitting there. It's doing nothing, you know. And Law Commission recommendations are to be respected because of the authorities and the kind of voices that they come from. But fundamentally, what happens to them? About a year and a bit ago, the Law Commission, the same Law Commission, made a recommendation about hate speech. Hate speech has only gone up. Nothing's happened about it. You know, so this entire exercise of this Law Commission report being the line in the sand that has been drawn, I'm sorry, I absolutely don't agree with that. It's as well-meaning as every Law Commission report is. What is done with it is disgraceful. This is what has happened with hate speech. This is what's going to happen with the BCCI and the RTI or something a few weeks ago.
So this is just the first step
we were talking about, and now it's this. It's literally like every few weeks stuff just comes up, and you are not doing anything about the actual. There's an actual legal draft bill, Prevention of Sporting Fraud Act, that nobody is saying anything about. It's
we'll
sitting
take
in
that
some
from you.
office in
We'll take that from you that this is just the initiative. This is just the first step that has been taken. But of course, let's also keep in mind that these recommendations in no way are binding on the government. That discretion rests with the government. One final question I'll just put across to Mr. Sorabjee here, that the way to go about this, the way that has been recommended by the Law Commission, is for the Parliament that it can pass a law on state subjects, either under Article 249. That's essentially what the Law Commission is advocating. that is likely to ruffle very many feathers as far as various state governments are concerned. We're talking about collaborative federalism. Legally speaking, how big of a challenge will it be for the parliament to legislate on subjects which fall under the state's domain? Mr. Sorabji.
Well, it will be in the concurrent list. I don't think there will be any difficulty in Parliament passing the law. But the real issue is, as the previous speaker said, nothing has been done for so many years. Well, if so, that is so, but now let's do it. Let's do it. And if there are any problems which we come across in implementation, then deal with those problems. But let's not kill the whole thing in the very inception. That's my point. Otherwise we never get along. After all, what's the whole idea of this? To give good governance to the people of Delhi. And you can't give good governance if there's all the time this controversy going on between LG and the Kejriwal state government. So that's the point.
Right.